Well, let me start by saying how delighted I am to meet you at last. I encountered your teachings a couple years ago, and they struck an immediate resonance with me because much of the work I do presents concrete examples of how the law of attraction works. My question has to do with co-creating. You've alluded a couple of times to events happening on the world stage, and although in my many travels outside of the United States, I've never encountered anything but warmth, friendship, and love from the people I've encountered, I feel as though our leaders are trying to create fear and distrust in us for groups of people who live abroad. I'm very active in opposing the coming war on Iraq, and it's hard for me not to feel fear and worry about things that are being done in the name of the American people. The thought that I choose is to feel good about the way people are uniting against this and reclaiming a political voice. But I just wanted to know if you had any thoughts that would be useful in that form of co-creating, in trying to counter things that others are doing in our names that we do not approve of.
Well, there is so much that you are bringing to the forefront here, and we're going to start at the outer edge and then work our way back to the central issue that you feel is the issue. We want to start with the idea of the path of least resistance. And so you hold a thought, and let's say you've been practicing it for a while, that says, while I am a citizen of this nation, I'm really a world citizen. I adore all people. I see value in all people. And I'm not much of a joiner of teams, me against you. I like to look for value everywhere I look.
Yes.
And while there are pockets where it's harder for me to see value, like government, still I am wanting to look worldwide and find value. And I practice that. And as I am looking worldwide and looking for value, I am quite a happy person. But then I see a part of this world who, for whatever reasons, valid or not valid, take a stance in my name to do something that if I got to choose, I would not do. And in doing so, I feel that they represent me. Really? Do you really?
I don't feel that they represent me. I feel that they present themselves as representing me to further some other end.
So, do you want to activate within yourself the feeling that they are representing of you? In other words, do they represent you or do they not?
I feel they do not.
And so, why activate that within you and give yourself grief over it? It's a very justified reason. You do it to justify the place that you stand. Now, when you escalate a thought that makes you feel negative emotion in order to justify where you stand, and in doing so, you disallow all of the resources that would be flowing through you otherwise, you disempower yourself, and it's easy to feel as if they have taken your power from you. Because if they weren't doing what they were doing, you would not feel like that. Yeah. But it's important to recognize that they cannot make you feel any way, that you can massage this into a way where you feel less resistant, and that's always what we encourage. When you are in utter alignment with who you are, when you truly understand that you are a physical extension of source energy, and you choose thoughts deliberately that keep you consistently aligned with that which is pure non-physical energy, you don't find anything that easily gets you disconnected from who you really are. And that is what we would call the ultimate choice of thought that ultimately take you to that place of non-resistance or that place of most allowing. In other words, you'd have to thrive under any and all conditions. But the teacher in you, who knows that while you could get there, is still worried about all of the others that don't know how to get there. And so you're sort of wanting to give them a shorter path to it. Esther noticed and commented to Jerry that while she, with every fiber of her being, is opposed with the idea of taking those bombs and laying them on that city where innocent people, which includes all of them, we might add, would be negatively impacted. And as you have said, she had a hard time not thinking about the subject because it's happening all around. So one day, she put it on the universe's side of the placemat. And she felt relief in doing that. And then within a couple of days, she began seeing the peace marches. And she began feeling relief when more voices were expressing what she felt. And then that bothered her, because it felt to her that a resistant thing was her path of less resistance. In other words, I feel better now that others are joining me in speaking out about how they feel. And then she said, Abraham, why do I feel better? I'm clearly taking a resistant stance. In other words, I've clearly joined, at least vibrationally and at least in spirit, the protesters. I've clearly joined them. So why does my thought of protest give me some relief? Because isn't relief only supposed to come from connecting with who I really am? And we said, all you did was find the thought that felt better. In other words, if your intent is to justify your position, then anything that justifies your position for a while is going to feel like your path of least resistance. But if you become one who is reaching always for your connection to Source, then that protest, no matter how good it feels under those conditions, will never feel good. So the way you feel is always predicated upon how clearly you have defined your real intent and how closely aligned that real intent is with who you really are, you see.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yes. Indeed, in the marches, in the handing of posters and handing out of flyers, in the letters that I've written to officials here and in France and wherever, I immediately feel a sense of ease.
Because it feels to you like you're doing something. It feels to you like you're being heard. In other words, what you said to us was, actions are being taken on my behalf that are not actions that I would take. And so then you said, I will offer my own actions. And when you began offering your own actions, it was like saying, see, these are my actions. Those do not represent my actions. These are my actions. It was your way of aligning you with you. It's helpful to realize that you cast a vibrational vote. And it's helpful to realize that from the perspective that you hold, when you shoot rockets of desire from your clear position, Source energy hears that. Let's go back to what we were talking about at the very beginning of this day, as we were talking about how every individual consciousness expresses its desire and Source answers all of it. So if everyone around the world, let's just talk about the human personalities, are today expressing their individual desires from their framework of where they are living, and if Source is answering all of it, then your world is in very good hands. And you say, yes, but Abraham, are you saying that if everybody is asking, that Source will answer it and then the war will not happen or the bombs will not drop? And we say, everything comes through the path of least resistance. And so as those bombs start falling, it means that the vibration of mass consciousness is more about that than about the other. And the protesters don't mean to do it, but they escalate the bombs dropping every time they put up a poster that says, no bombs, please.
That is the dilemma. And, you know, I think about this throughout all of the activity, knowing that focus on a war, even in opposition, draws attention to it. And I myself try to look past that to the community that is being formed against it, and what good can come out of the common desire for peace.
As protest, or let's call it as being for the opposite of war, begins to surface and gel within mass consciousness, do you think that the majority of people that are joining the march are joining it from a real sense of injustice happening to the people in Iraq? Or do you think that most people are using that as their excuse to push against something that feels more personal to them? In other words, from your own experience, would you say that your wanting to protest the war is because you have taken yourself to the streets of Iraq mentally and have assumed that place and are speaking on their behalf? Or is there some other message that you are feeling that your protest is helping you to amplify? In other words, is the war and the protest serving you in some way too?
My strong feelings about the subject go beyond this particular conflict. Let me put it this way. I do not feel that we adequately appreciate the value of all the variety of societies, individuals, plants, resources. I feel that everything that is here is what we have to work with to find happiness, to create beauty, enjoyment, and to destroy any part of that is wrong. I think we're a long way from respecting everything, in what would be my ideal world. But that's the vision that I keep in front of me as I go through this.
As you or Esther or anyone pushes against what your government proposes, you do so as you carry your banner of feeling that there is injustice. In other words, you've said things like, they're speaking on my behalf and they're not speaking what I would speak. And so in the same way that they are taking action against a country for reasons that you do not feel are valid, you are protesting against them for reasons that we do not feel are valid. In other words, everybody's sort of using somebody else as their excuse to be disconnected. And we don't think joining forces in pushing one more time against something is going to put any of you back into your alignment, which is what all of you are ultimately reaching for.